Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of the Playoff Push podcast and episode 2 of our NFL recap series, one per week. Of course, this is after week 2, currently in the middle of the Monday Night Football game between the Eagles and the Falcons. Eagles are currently leading this game 7-3 with 26 seconds left in the second quarter. So we're quite literally at the midway mark. We're just going to go over some of the games from week 2 today and see how they went, the best fantasy performances, and what games you should look out for next week. We lead off this week with Thursday Night Football on September 12th, Buffalo and Miami. I came into this game really liking Miami. I thought their offense was going to dominate the pretty battered Buffalo defense that got torn apart during the offseason. Then Tua Tagovailoa comes in, plays a horrendous game, and not only that, gets injured, another concussion for what I believe is the third time, I want to say. And it's not looking great for Tua. People were advising him to retire. He will not be. He will fight to make it back to the league as soon as he can. But this was a James Cook legacy game all the way through. 11 carries for 78 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, as well as 1 reception for 17 yards and a touchdown in the air. James Cook really ran the offense. Josh Allen, 13 for 19, 139 yards and a touchdown. But overall, not much production from anyone outside of Cook. Khalil Shakir had 5 receptions for 54 yards, which is all right, but nothing compared to the Cook show. Just overall an all right game from the Bills, but they still managed to win by 21 points due to Tua's 3 interceptions. Devon Achane also had a great game, 22 carries for 96 yards and 7 receptions for 69 yards and a touchdown, putting up some nice fantasy points there for Miami. Waddle and Hill were held pretty far down. Waddle, 4 receptions, 41 yards. Hill, 3 receptions, 24 yards. The second leading receiver on Miami was Jonnu Smith. So this was overall a really, really negative game for this Miami offense. And now they're going to have to run with Skylar Thompson, signing Snoop Huntley off of the Baltimore practice squad today. Will he start? Probably not. It's going to be Skylar Thompson's team for now until Tua can get back. But who knows what will happen for Miami from the rest of this year with the inconsistent quarterback play we're going to see in the future. Second game, we got Minnesota San Fran, another huge upset. Minnesota upsetting the Niners 23-17. The Niners go 1-1 now, while Sam Darnold leads the Vikings to a 2-0 start. Darnold actually a very, very solid game. 17 for 26, 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Justin Jefferson, 4 receptions for 133 yards, averaging 33.2 yards a catch with a touchdown, was taken out of the game due to a supposed injury. He should be back soon enough, I assume by next week. I believe it was some kind of little cramp down there in the leg area, but he should be fine from what I've seen so far. So the Vikings with a huge upset there. I'm not going to go into too much depth with it. There's not much depth needed. Jordan Mason had a great game, 20 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown, averaging exactly 5 yards a carry. Debo, 8 receptions for 110 yards and 13.8 average yards per catch. The issue here with Debo, and I have him in fantasy, so this is like really tragic to me. He did strain his calf and is expected to be out a couple weeks per head coach Shanahan. So that's not a great look for Debo fantasy owners. However, Kittle, 7 receptions, 76 yards, and a touchdown, putting up easily the best stat line for any tight end this week. He was out of the game for a while to go get an IV from the locker room. He came back. He was perfectly fine. Other than that, the Niners offense was very productive for a game in which they lose to Sam Darnold. So, again, if you're a Niner fan, I would not be too unbelievably concerned. But, it's never great when you lose to Sam Darnold. Game 3, Seahawks Patriots. This was one of the thrillers of the week. Seattle does take it 23-20 in overtime. Jacoby Brissett played a pretty solid game, 15 for 27, 149 yards, and a touchdown through the air. Hunter Henry had 8 receptions for 109 receiving yards. So a very good game there from I don't know if elderly is the right word, but a long-time tenured tight end in the league. Jalen Polk came out of nowhere, putting 2 receptions, 12 yards, and a touchdown up. I actually saw him coming into this year and knew he was going to have a big role It seems like he's finally starting to get that role. Antonio Gibson and Ramondre split carries. Gibson won on the yard aspect with 96 and 8.7 per carry. Ramondre had 81 total, 3.9 per carry, but did get the touchdown. Seattle on the winning side, Geno 33 for 44 for 327 yards and a touchdown. They relatively held Charbonnet down, 14 carries, 38 yards, and a touchdown. So he did get the tutty, but really was held down on the carries and the yardage, really dominating the air. DK Metcalf, 10 receptions, 129 yards, and a touchdown. Jackson Smith-Njigba, 12 receptions, 117 yards. So big air raid for those two guys. Other than that, not much production from the Seattle offense. They still managed to take it, though, over the Patriots, who are actually looking pretty good to begin this year, knock on wood, but they're actually playing very good football. And then we get to my Giants, an absolute disaster of a game. Daniel Jones actually played more than mediocre football. He had 16 for 28, 178 yards, and 2 touchdowns through the air. Devin Singletary also had a rushing touchdown. And we lose 18-21, becoming the first team in NFL history to score 3 touchdowns, allow 0, and still lose in a 21-18 final. Newly tenured kicker for the Washington Commanders, Austin Seibert, was 7 for 7 on field goal attempts, of course, getting them 21 points to knock us off of our good football podium. Malik Neighbors, 10 receptions, 127 yards, and a touchdown, showing what he is capable of, putting good numbers on the board. The offense ran through him. 10 receptions compared to 6 from all the rest of the Giants players, 3 from Slayton, 2 from Wandale, 1 from Singletary. That was it. Giants had no production outside of Neighbors, and that was a big reason why they lost. Also, Graham Gano went down on quite literally the first play of the game, chasing down on a kick return. Jamie Gillian came in, missed a field goal, and we went for 2 every single touchdown after that, and it never worked. So Giants fall 18-21 to the Commanders in historic fashion. Next up, we got Chargers-Panthers. Nobody thought it was going to be close. Chargers dominate 26-3. Herbert with not even too great of a game, 14 for 20, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns on a pick. J.K. Dobbins carried this Chargers offense, putting great numbers up, 17 carries, 131 yards, and a touchdown. And Quentin Johnston finally made his name known, 5 receptions, 51 yards, 2 touchdowns in the air, basically carrying Herbert's passing game. And new information revealed today, midday, Bryce Young will be benched for week 3 for the Carolina Panthers, and Andy Dalton will be starting his revenge arc as this remainder of the year. The Panthers face every team Andy Dalton has formerly played for. So we'll see if I forget his nickname. I probably should remember that. But if Andy Dalton can come back against his former squads and do something, we knew Carolina was going to lose. We know they suck, and that's that. They lose again. For your pick 'em, you might as well just bet on whoever's playing the Panthers that week. But how about the New Orleans Saints? When you're thinking of a topic and preseason, who's going to dominate? The Saints do not immediately come to mind. Sure, it's a good offense, but is it really that good? Yes. Derek Carr, 11 for 16, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Alvin Kamara, 20 carries, 115 yards, and 3 touchdowns, as well as adding 1 touchdown through the air. 2 receptions, 65 yards. So Kamara putting 4 touchdowns on the board in this game. Shaheed with 4 receptions, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Olave adding 4 receptions for an average of 20.2 yards per catch on his own. This Saints offense is absolutely terrifying against the Cowboys defense that many people had as the best in the league coming into the year. Getting 44 dropped on them by Derek Carr is a sign that this Saints team is legit. Carr is 33 years old, absolutely nuking the Dallas Cowboys defense. That's scary, not only for Cowboys fans, but for the rest of the league to see what New Orleans can do. Then we head to Green Bay next. Very disappointing game for the Colts. Everyone thought Richardson was going to ball after his previous game. He did not. 17 for 34, 204 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 picks. I have Richardson in my league that I consider to matter. So not a great look there. I still should win, hopefully, assuming Devonta Smith and Jalen Hurts don't have historic games the second half. It is currently a 7-6 lead for the Eagles, by the way. Falcons kicked a field goal right before half. Jonathan Taylor, 12 carries, 103 yards, no scores out of it. Alec Pierce, 5 receptions, 56 yards, and 1 touchdown. That was really it for the Colts offense. Nothing really came of anything. Malik Willis actually had an all right game, 12 for 14, 122 yards and a touchdown. But the real carrier was Josh Jacobs, 32 carries and 151 yards on the ground. And there was a really interesting play where Malik Willis was snapped the ball from the center and he had to run it on a 3rd and long because their center threw up on the ball. So that was a very interesting play for Green Bay. They still ended up winning, but it costed them a drive that could have had so much fruition to it. But Green Bay still does win. They are 1-1, and this Indianapolis Colts team is starting out 0-2. Not a great look for Richardson and Pittman fantasy owners like myself. Heading over to Browns and Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence just not playing great football this year. 14 for 30, 220 yards. That's it. Etienne had 52 yards and a touchdown, but really not a great showing from anyone on this Jaguars offense. Just painfully mediocre. Christian Kirk has 2 receptions on the year. Evan Engram has 1. So guys that were drafted pretty solidly in fantasy this year, not doing absolutely anything. Brian Thomas getting 2 receptions for 94 yards. My boy Brenton Strange, 3 receptions for 65 yards. Gabe Davis, 3 for 43. But nothing really special brewing on this Jaguars offense. You can say the same with the Browns. Watson, 22 for 34 for 186 yards. Again, nothing special. Deshaun Watson with a rushing touchdown. Ford with 64 yards. This was really just a disaster of a game that happened to go Cleveland's way. You could not pay me to watch that game back. It was not good. It was boring, and Browns win. That's that. Then we get into Jets Titans. Aaron Rodgers finally gets his revenge game. 18 for 30, 176 yards, and 2 touchdowns after losing to the Niners in week 1. Showing his arm off once again. 7 receptions, 52 yards, and 1 touchdown for Breece Hall. And then Braylon Allen coming out of nowhere. 7 carries, 33 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. And 2 receptions, 23 yards, and a touchdown through the air. This was the Braylon Allen game. And just a great performance overall from the Jets halfbacks. Rodgers really finding great ways to use them. Garrett Wilson still not getting too many receptions, but honestly, the Titans would have had a chance to win this game if Will Levis wasn't the way he is. Another crucial fumble. Tried to pitch it to Tyjae Spears when he was getting ripped up. Fumbled it. Jets took over, just robbing the Titans of at least 3 points on what could have been a scoring drive. He is just not looking NFL ready, Will Levis. He is just making stupid mistakes. He's a talented quarterback, just not mentally quite yet. Not what you need to see from a pretty highly drafted quarterback. Tony Pollard, 17 carries, 62 yards, 5 receptions, 40 yards through the air. And other than that, again, nothing from this Titans offense. Ridley did have 4 receptions, 77 yards, and a touchdown. So he was the lone passing scorer as well as the lone rushing scorer. He had 1 rush for 10 yards and a touchdown. So Ridley had 2 touchdowns, only one of which through the air, and the Titans do fall to Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. Next up, we head to Buccaneers-Lions. This was the only game of the week where I could not place a bet on who would win. I do a pick 'em with my friends in our group chat, and this was the one game I ignored because I really couldn't pick a team. I was hinting at the Bucs, who ended up winning, but you can never bet against Detroit in the modern day. Tampa Bay does come out on top 20-16. Baker Mayfield clearly regressing from last game, but that was pretty obvious. That was a once-in-a-season game that Baker had in week 1. The real problem in this game was Jared Goff. 34 for 55, 307 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 picks. Not a great showing from Goff. The run game really carried heavy here. Gibbs, 13 for 84, and Montgomery, 11 for 35 and a touchdown. Amon-Ra had 11 receptions for 119 yards through the air. Jameson Williams, 5 receptions, 79 yards. But overall, definitely could have been a better showing from Detroit. They could have easily won this game, but they just threw a few drives away and threw away Aiden Hutchinson's historic game. If you didn't watch it, you want to guess how many sacks this dude had? Exactly. 4.5 sacks, I believe 3 of which came in the first 10 minutes. So Aiden Hutchinson, historic game, still lose to Tampa Bay. Mayfield, of course, played all right. 12 for 19, 185 yards, touchdown and a pick, as well as having a rushing touchdown. I've seen people putting Mike Vick over Baker Mayfield quite a few times so far. 5 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown for Vick. Rachaad White really horrendous this game. 10 carries, 18 yards, absolutely nothing. Chris Godwin putting up historic numbers, 7 receptions, 117 yards, and a touchdown. He's probably looking as a top 3 fantasy receiver so far this year. Of course, regression to the mean is real and it will happen. But for now, Godwin looking very, very good through the first 2 weeks of this NFL season. Down to our last 5 completed games here. We have Raiders and Ravens. The Ravens are now 0-2 after falling 26-23. Lamar played an all right game, 21 for 34, 247 yards, 1 touchdown, and a pick. Derrick Henry, 18 carries, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Zay Flowers had a nice game. Other than that, the Ravens really never got anything going. They did have a nice pick from Marlon Humphrey, but other than that, no real standouts on the Ravens squad besides Zay Flowers. He did have a couple nice routes. He did play very, very well. Minshew, however, 30 for 38, 276 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Madison did have 4 carries for 1 yard and a touchdown, but we can ignore him. It was really Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers dominating this game. Adams, 9 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown. Bowers also 9 receptions, this time for 98 yards, putting up historic numbers for a rookie tight end. I don't know the exact statistics, but trust me, look at his stats. You'll know exactly what I mean. So the Ravens fall to 0-2. Raiders will advance to 1-1. But then we get to one of my surprise blowouts of the week. It could be the Saints, but also the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray with a perfect passer rating, 17 for 21, 266 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Marvin Harrison coming out of nowhere after 1 reception, 4 yards in week 1 to 4 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I believe both those touchdowns in the first 7 or 8 minutes on absolute nukes from Kyler Murray. James Conner rushed a nice game, 21 carries, 122 yards, and a touchdown. But it was really the Marvin Harrison show through and through. He's starting to show a capable NFL defense, what he can do. I can only imagine what the future holds for this kid, but it is going to be impressive. Marvin Harrison already doing something that his father only did once in his Hall of Fame career, which is very impressive to lead off. Then we get to what I believe to be my game of the week, Bengals and Chiefs. The Chiefs come out on top 26-25. In the 5 times the Cincinnati Bengals and Kansas City Chiefs have played last, they've all been by 3 or less points. This one going in the Chiefs' favor, of course, 26-25. Joe Burrow put up an incredible line, 23 for 36, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Not much in the rushing game at all. Mike Gesicki, 7 receptions, 91 yards. And nobody else really did anything except for my boy, a guy who I wanted the Giants to draft in 2023. When they didn't, I could not have been more annoyed. Andrei Iosivas, 2 receptions, 7 yards, 2 touchdowns, absolutely dominating on routes in the end zone, not even close on a few of them. His second touchdown was a disgusting fake slant where he stopped on a dime, went right back, and Burrow just tossed it right to him. Really unfortunate that they wasted a great performance from Gesicki, a great performance from Iosivas, and one of the coolest interceptions I've ever seen from Cam Taylor-Britt. After roasting Xavier Worthy recently, he absolutely mosses him, one hand Beckham style. Just a great interception that could have given the Bengals a spot. Unfortunately, I believe the next few plays, Burrow fumbled it and the Chiefs went back to score. So not a great look there from Cincinnati, but they had a great passing offense this week. Just weren't able to get it done in the run game. I think it cost them. Mahomes, really not a great line. 18 for 25, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Pacheco, 19 carries for 90 yards, but Pacheco will be placed on IR and be sidelined for a long time, really injuring his leg. So not a great look. The Chiefs really don't have a next up running back at all. I believe it would technically be Carson Steele, but I don't know if that's who they're going to end up going with. They might try to get someone off a practice squad. Who knows? But the Chiefs do not have a definitive solid halfback behind Pacheco. So we'll see what they do there. Rashee Rice, 5 receptions, 75 yards, and a touchdown. They also gave, I believe, their left tackle, Wanya Morris, 1 reception, 1 yard, and a touchdown, which is pretty nice. But overall, not a great game from KC. You could say they got bailed on the PI at the end of the game. I'm not going to say it, but you could make a case for it. It's KC. We know what happens. Pittsburgh and Denver. Bo Nix, once again, doing absolutely nothing. 20 for 35, 246 yards, 2 picks, giving the Steelers the ball. Steelers, this offense is not looking that great, but they're still getting numbers up. I mean, 13 for 20 for 117 yards and a touchdown from Fields was enough to win this game. We were looking at the first shutdown of the year. Unfortunately, it did not happen as Denver was able to get a couple field goals in. Again, another really boring game from Pittsburgh. I want to like this offense so bad, but this team is just so annoying to watch because they have so much potential and just don't score. And that's what it is, you know? And then we get to last night's game, Sunday Night Football, Chicago, Houston. Houston came out on top because CJ Stroud is that dude. 23 for 36, 260 yards, and a touchdown for the young GOAT. Not much in the run game. Nico Collins, 8 receptions, 135 yards, and a touchdown, putting up massive numbers. Although the Texans did have a huge loss in Joe Mixon, I don't know how long he'll necessarily be out, but I do not believe he returned. The Bears are not looking good. Caleb Williams, 23 for 37, 174 yards, and 2 picks. Not much on the ground game. Khalil Herbert did score their touchdown, but, he had 2 carries for 3 yards. How much credit can you really give? Really no life in this Bears offense so far. Absolutely nothing. I would try to make it sound nice. I cannot make it sound nice. Just a disappointing offense so far. And the final game, we are currently at halftime. 7-6, Philadelphia leads Atlanta. Jalen Hurts with the drive of a lifetime, ending in a score with Devonta Smith. Hurts currently sitting at 9 for 13, 70 yards and a touchdown. Smith, 3 receptions, 30 yards and a touchdown. Second leading receiver for the Eagles is currently Grant Calcaterra, 2 receptions, 19 yards. And that's that. Hurts rushing it a bit. Saquon really not getting much plays at all. We will update, well, you'll update yourselves when the game's over, but it is currently a 7-6 ball game. And now we'll head over to fantasy, let you know the top fantasy scorers of the week. Number one, who even thought it would be anyone else? It's my boy, a guy who I try to draft every year if I possibly can, Alvin Kamara, putting up one of his legendary nuke games once again, 44 fantasy points in standard ESPN PPR. He is just a demon on this New Orleans offense, has been for years. And the fact this is not his best game in my fantasy career is crazy. I had him when he had that ridiculous game on Christmas. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you should probably know what I'm talking about. That was an iconic game, 52-33 win over the Vikings on Christmas of 2020. Kamara had 6 touchdowns in that game, 22 carries for 155 yards and 6 tutties. Just an iconic game in fantasy football history. So Kamara is known to have those massive boom games, and you just never expect them until they happen. That was this week. He scored 44. Second place was 29.5. That was Devon Achane. Projected for 17, outscores that by 12.5 in a 31-10 loss to Buffalo. Very good stat line there for Achane. Harrison, 0.5 behind him. Marvin Harrison Jr., of course, his first big game of his career, will not be anywhere close to his last. DK Metcalf, 0.1 points behind Marvin Harrison. DK, the sole really amazing spot in that Seahawks offense this week, putting up almost 29 fantasy points. Malik Neighbors, 28.7 in the first game. Daniel Jones looked like a competent quarterback, and I don't even know how long, probably at least 20 weeks is what we're looking at. Then James Cook with his legacy game, 28.5 points. Nico Collins, 27.5. Devontae Adams with 26. Chris Godwin with 24.7. and Calvin Ridley with 24.7. This was the week of the receivers. When you look at the rankings for fantasy points on ESPN Standard PPR, these spots are all receivers. 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 20 are all receivers. Then everyone else is either halfback or a quarterback or whatever you want it to be. Austin Siebert sitting in the 19 slot with 22 fantasy points as a kicker. Kittle, I believe, in the 21st slot with 20.6 points, the best of any tight end this week. But that was this week in NFL. Alvin Kamara putting the Saints on his back, absolutely dominating Dallas. Marvin Harrison doing the same thing over the Rams with Arizona. Chargers dominate the Panthers, and Tua Tagovailoa is in a very rough spot. So are the Ravens and the Colts. Niners, mild concern. Giants fans like me are already numb, have been for quite a while at this point. And the Chiefs are looking just as competent as they've ever been. Same with the Bengals, putting up great lines, even with Chase doing nothing and Higgins being out. Texans, we'll still have to see if they're legit. I still have faith in them. We will see. But that was week 2 in the NFL season. Thank you for listening to this second NFL recap of the Playoff Push podcast. We will have another episode for you tomorrow morning. This one an MLB episode, as we are 2 weeks away from the end of the season. And after this episode, I will see you guys. Have a great rest of your day and make sure to tune in tomorrow for your baseball.